Hello booktube, hello book friends. Welcome back to my channel and another video and a top 10 of sorts video today. I thought as it was Midsummer, or at least Midsummer will have come and gone probably by the time you see this, and it's nearly the end of June in the kind of coming week or so. I thought I would look back over the last 6 months and pick out the 10 books that have been my kind of favourites out of the last 6 months. Last December, I did a top 10 of my books from the year, books that I'd read during the year. I thought I'd do a 10 now at like the midpoint of the year. Partly out of curiosity and partly to see how many of them have the kind of longevity to stay on that list through to December. I'm no idea what I'm going to read over the coming 6 months. I've got a fair idea that some of these books up here might be included, but no real kind of firm plans at this point in time. So I thought I would go through 10. They're not in kind of any particular order. They're just kind of the sort of random order going back through my reading log in terms of when I read them. So don't imply that the first book is the worst and the last book is the best, although I think I probably have saved my favourite for last. And if you want to pause the video now, go down to the comments and have a guess at what that might be. I think most people will probably be able to work it out if you've been watching long enough. So let's start. As I say, not in any particular order, and no kind of ranking should be implied. So first up is Alan Moorehead's Eclipse. This was a relatively recent read, and it's Alan Moorehead was a journalist, and in particular a journalist during the Second World War, and this is the book he wrote based on his diaries and the articles that he wrote through kind of the invasion of Italy in 1943/44, and then the invasion of Normandy in France on Operation Overlord, or D-Day as it's more commonly known, 6th of June 1944, right the way up to the end of the war. So crossing the Rhine and into Germany in 1945. It includes, I think, Operation Market Garden, which was the failed attempt to seize the river bridge at Arnhem in Holland in 1944, with a view to bringing the war to an early end. So I really enjoyed that. Thoroughly recommend it. Next up, again, another book that was a relatively recent read, another non-fiction, and that's Christopher Brown's A Natural History of Empty Lots. This is the author's kind of story of how he moved to basically an empty commercial lot where he built his home, and this is in Texas. So I can't remember exactly where in Texas. Might be Austin, and his story of kind of rediscovering urban wildlife and how it had kind of come to accommodate us rather than us accommodating it. And so there's lots of natural history stories here about the kind of the edgelands where the human infrastructure meets the natural world. So I thoroughly recommend that. Then next up, again, a relatively recent read. So they're all relatively recent, aren't they? They're all the last 6 months. Bram Stoker's Dracula. This was a first time I've read this. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I am going to read it again at some point. And yeah, I thought it was just brilliant. And given that, quite a lot of it is because it's written, what's the word? Can't remember the technical word, but it's written, and it's written like a bit like a diary, and its covers kind of May, June, July, August, so on. So recommend that. Another book I don't think I've mentioned on the channel, which is this lovely, huge book, The Gardens at Rousham, by Francis Hamel. This is a book of paintings that Hamel did during his. I mean, he lived on the Rousham estate, which is in West Sussex, I think, over many years, and he basically painted the estate in terms of pictures that he drew and paintings that he made, and there are just some fantastic paintings in this. So I really love this book. It's obviously mostly pictures, and there are just some absolutely stunning paintings. He's recently finished a book on Oxford, so there is a book of paintings for Oxford, which I would like to get hold of a copy of. But I've coveted this for a while, and finally got it when I managed to get it in a sale, because as you might expect, it was quite an expensive book. The Oxford one is similarly expensive, so I will similarly be waiting for another sale. Okay, moving on. Another natural history book. This is Richard Adams's A Nature Diary. And this is Richard Adams, who is the author of Watership Down, amongst other books. It's obviously the book he is most famous for. And he kept a nature diary. And this covers a year from that diary when he was living on the Isle of Man. And it's mostly kind of the walks with his dog and the things that he sees and the changes of the seasons. But it is a lovely, and it's also it's illustrated by John Lawrence, and it has some wonderful illustrations in. And there is an illustration literally on every page. Some are in colour and some are black and white. But yeah, so that's a favourite from this year. The next up, I haven't got a physical copy of it. It was an ebook, and so I'll pop up one way or the other a pickup. That was again another relatively recent read, Devices and Desires by P.D. James, which is part of the Adam Dalgleish mystery series. I'm slowly working my way through that series, and that's, in my opinion, the best one that I've read so far. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought I got it all cracked in terms of method, motive, and opportunity, and then was proved wrong. I had it mostly right, just not quite the who it was. I had everything else worked out. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. It's a great piece of fiction. And then next is Time's Echo by Jeremy Eichler. This is the story of, I need to look at the back, 4 composers, Shostakovich, Britten, Schoenberg, and Strauss, and the story of how their work was affected by the impact of the Second World War. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, some of the composers were Jewish, so they were directly affected in the sense that they had to kind of flee Germany or by virtue of marriage were protected to a degree in terms of being able to stay in Germany. But it is absolutely fascinating, and the various bits of music that they composed during that time, and I would thoroughly recommend reading this if you're interested in that period in history. This is certainly worth a read. Again, next one I haven't got a hard copy. It was an ebook as well, and that was Peter Straub's Ghost Story. Now this is kind of a story of the story of the Chowder Society, which is basically a group of old men who meet once a month, I think, and just tell stories, and how some of those stories prove to be the result of a malevolent presence, which ultimately starts to murder them one at a time. I really love the horror stories of Peter Straub. I think he was writing at the same time that Stephen King was writing, and hadn't written as many books. He passed away a few years ago, but in many ways, some of his books are, in my opinion, better than Stephen King's. Not all of them, but then again, not all of Stephen King's novels are great, but some are better than the best that King has produced. Ghost Story is probably nearly, maybe one of them. So yeah, I would recommend Ghost Story if you haven't read it. And then another art book, actually. This is Edward Ardizonne's Sketches for Friends. Edward Ardizonne was an artist and an illustrator. He drew a lot of illustrations for children's books, particularly in the kind of 40s, 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. He was also a war artist during the Second World War. And this is just a kind of collection of some of the illustrations and drawings he did for, when he was writing letters to, home to family during the Second World War, or just to friends and acquaintances at a later date. And again, this is just it's a delightful little book, and I love it. Latterly, some of them are in colour, but most of them are just black and white line drawings. So that's 9 books. Now, did you guess what the last one was going to be? Did you think possibly it could be a book that gets probably mentioned more often than anything else on this channel? And although it's featuring in my 2025, top 10 to date, and will probably still be there in December, it is actually a book that I started in 2024. It's just so massive that I didn't finish it until January 2025. It is, of course, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I don't think I need to say any more about this because I've mentioned it so many times on the channel. But this is an amazing book. It's absolutely brilliant. It follows the story and life of Edmond Dantes, where he is snatched away from a successful career life by false accusations because of something that he witnessed. And it's the story of how he escapes and seeks revenge against those who wronged him and took away that opportunity that he never had. I love it. And as I've said many times, this is definitely going to be a reread, possibly in a different translation if I can get hold of one. But yeah, Count of Monte Cristo. So that's my 10 for the first 6 months of 2025. What would you include from your reading to date? Let me know in the comments what books have you enjoyed in the first 6 months of the year. And are there any that you're looking forward to reading in the next 6 months? To say, I haven't really got any hard plans yet, but I'm sure some of these will not make it to December in terms of a top 10 of 2025, but I'm sure some of them will as well. So yeah, let me know your favourites in the comments below, and as always, if you have been, thank you for watching, and I will speak to you again next time. Take care now. Bye bye.